Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. My guest this week is Dan Pescone, founder and CEO of Tailored Wealth, a financial planning and wealth management firm serving business leaders and corporate executives. Now, Dan is a former executive and revenue leader in the financial services industry himself, and he's brought that business development mindset front and center into how he runs and grows his firm. He is also the creator of Making Sense of Your Money, a weekly newsletter and content brand built around financial education. And as you'll hear in this episode, that newsletter is just one piece of a pretty impressive marketing ecosystem he has built. Now, Dan is one of those advisors who is genuinely a marketing junkie, and he approaches growing his business with the same strategic rigor that he brings to his clients' financial plans. He's walking me through the full content ecosystem he's built, how LinkedIn and his newsletter work together as his primary client acquisition channels, and what he's learned from testing and sometimes ditching platforms along the way. We're also getting into one of my favorite topics, which is how to actually evaluate whether a marketing channel is working for you, how long to give it before you pull the plug, and how to think about time blocking so that your marketing doesn't fall to the bottom of your to-do list, as I know it does for so many of you. And Dan shares the framework he uses to track exactly where his clients are coming from, so he's not just guessing what's working, he really does have a pulse on all of it. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by marketing and all of the options in front of you and wished someone would just give you a clear, practical way to think through it all, this episode is going to show you exactly how Dan spends his week and how you might be able to think about what marketing looks like in yours. So without further ado, let's dive in. Dan, I'm so excited to have you on the Finance Marketing Podcast today. How are you?
I'm great, Hillary. Thanks for having me. Big fan of the show, have taken from it and hoping to give a little bit back today.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. Can we just start with a little intro from you? What kind of business are you building? Who do you serve? What do you do for them? Tell us all that good stuff.
Yeah, we at this point in time are a pretty comprehensive financial planning and wealth management organization. We're fairly young, but fast growing. I had a corporate career before this, which we can maybe get into a little bit of how I run the business and then frankly, who we serve, which was your next question. So we typically serve corporate executives, and then I guess like my sub niche below would be revenue leaders, because I was a former chief revenue officer sales. So, that's an avatar that I very, very well and relate pretty well. So that's a little bit of who we serve. We're getting into some small business owners as well, as I've sort of expanded my network and, consider myself now a small business owner. So I've chosen my niches based off of who I am / was and like the people that I like to interact with. So the first one would be corporate executives, with like the more specific being redders, and then business owners is a growing population for us. Based in Connecticut, we have a small but growing team, and I'm sure we'll get into it today, but I do a lot in the way of digital marketing and content.
Yeah, so I love this. So you love sales. You have a big background in sales.
I do. So yes, I started my career in sales, called on financial advisors. Actually, they were my client when I first started my career, and then had stops, one with a big company, one with a small but growing company. And each of them kind of served as valuable experience to the way that I run.
Give me some more details there. How do you think that's influenced how you run your business and how you're trying to grow your business?
Yeah, so I think that one concept that served me really well in business, Hillary, is figure out and identify what you're really good at and what you love to do, and then just do as much of that as possible. Mm-hmm. And then as you grow and as you scale, which is the mode that we're in right now, you try to identify others that fit other skills, other sections of the business that they're really good at and they love to do. So when I started the business, I was part-time. I was still in my corporate role when I started the business. And my foundation was I like to do a few different things. Number one, I like to lead people. Okay. So I view myself as a CEO type leader of the firm, even though we're small today. I only have a couple of members. We're growing, but I view myself as a CEO and a leader of the business first and a leader of the people in the business. And then I also love to attract customers, business development. We'll get into it, but I'm sort of a marketing junkie, if you will. So I love to learn from people like you and others that have done it at a high level. So those are the things that I really, really enjoy. So I'm just trying to do as much of that within the business as possible. Mm-hmm. And you know what I learned I started my career at Prudential, and I learned a lot with respect to how to lead people. I learned the business, the technical aspects of the business. And frankly, when we supported financial advisors in that role, I learned that there were some really, really skilled and frankly advisors that I would have hired to manage my money, but they didn't have necessarily the businesses that they wanted because they didn't have that business development and marketing gene, right? So I structure this entire business around the fact that I'm going to spend as much of my time in that business development. Some people call it the rainmaker role. I don't love that term, but in that role as possible. And then I'm going to have team members that do a great job of serving our clients. And that should hopefully allow us to grow more efficiently and ensure the highest level client service along the way.
Have you found that that's challenging with the clients that you bring on because they are building trust basically with you, and then you're still in the picture, of course, but then their point person might be someone else on the team? And the reason I'm asking is because I've heard other advisors struggle with this tension there. How do you approach that?
So I've done it both ways. And here's what I would say. It can absolutely be a challenge. I think that what I found is if you make the initial connection and the initial positioning of the business all about you, then that is very, very difficult. I try and make it about the business and about like how we serve clients. And I position it as whether Joe, Smith, Nancy, whoever is serving you, that's not going to matter. You're going to get the same level of service across the board. And then, oh, by the way, I don't mind saying this. I'm in the process of hiring a new financial planner right now, and I told him this in the interview process. I love saying to prospects, whoever the planner is way smarter and better at this than I am, frankly. I don't mind doing that, right? And they get a little bit of a chuckle out of it, right? So the answer is, and then the last component to that, Hillary, is you've got to bring the person in early enough in the process so there's trust built up.
Yeah.
There can't just be like, Dan went and just built a full financial plan for me. I moved my assets. He taught me investment strategy, all of this stuff. And then, oh, by the way, let me hand you off to Joe or Sally over here. That won't work. But I think if you bring the person in early on enough and you position it as a team process, then it can be really, really a valuable strategy. And it works for me. I don't think it would work for Kaiser, to be honest. But what it allows me to do, which I'm sure we're going to talk about more, is spend more time on marketing and business development, which is what I love to do.
Right. Because at some point, if it is just you and a very, very small team, there's only so many hours in the day. And as the founder and the business owner, a lot of times you are the person that is responsible for growing the business. So I think that everyone can kind of get behind how do we make the business less founder dependent if we can, so that it can continue on despite whatever happens in life and whatever our exit plans are and things like that. So let's switch gears a little bit over to marketing. You have tried a lot of things. Before we hit record on this call, you mentioned the term shiny object syndrome, which is something that you actively try to avoid and yet also can maybe admit to having a little bit. I can admit to having some shiny object syndrome. Absolutely. So tell me a little bit about all of the things that you have tried, and then we'll dive into what are you left with and how do you decide what's not working, what is working?
Yeah. So, and I'll say this, I think shiny object syndrome, we joke about it, but I think it can actually be a benefit as long as you manage it accordingly. Because what I found and where I'm at today, I was chasing a bunch of shiny objects, call it 2-ish years ago. right? And some of the things I kept, some of the things I did away with, and some of the things I spent money on and time on, frankly, that I didn't get much benefit from. But I chalk it up as valuable learning to, this, Hillary, in marketing, all of the concepts that we preach about work to some degree, right? Like, it's not like one thing works and one thing doesn't. It's what is right for you. What do you enjoy doing? What, again, back to what do you do well, right? So what are the skill sets that you have and how does that relate well? Like, if you're just a great master networker, then you should get out of the office and go to a lot of networking events. You absolutely should, right? And if you're a great writer, yeah, you should consider writing a newsletter, right? Like, and that's something that you enjoy. So that's the way that I've thought about it. And I'm left of, content themes and content platforms, if you will. So here's what we're doing today. Here's what I'm left with. And I'll say this, I'm not married to all of them, but I'll lead with the ones that I have achieved some success with, and I will continue to absolutely commit to moving forward. They're kind of core foundations in my business now. The first would LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is, other than referral, my greatest client acquisition channel. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But it took me a while to learn LinkedIn. And I've invested in courses and spoken to others. So I didn't just show up, start posting and send out a bunch of automated DMs. I had to really learn how LinkedIn really works. And now I've got a really good at that. The next would be my newsletter. So we've got a content brand. My firm is called Tailored Wealth, but the content brand is called Making Sense of Your Money. And Making Sense of Your Money started as a newsletter. And then we built off of it a YouTube channel. And then a podcast. Each of them are different in nature. Obviously, the newsletter is email form, comes out once a week. The podcast is typically once a week, and I will send a quick summary of the podcast episodes to the newsletter group. What's different about the podcast is it's not just me speaking. I bring out a guest like you do, right? And I enjoy that because it allows me to bring in people that serve different spheres of financial services, right? So, I've had just people from all walks of the industry come on, and I've learned a ton from them. And it's typically not people that are like in the financial planning world, but they do something that can support what we do for our clients or add additional intelligence. And then the YouTube channel is one that I'm just starting to get some traction on. It's a little bit new and learned a lot of things along the way and have learned from others that have done it well that's but I think you and I may have chatted about this in our what I do with the YouTube videos, even if I'm not generating leads just from YouTube, I'm using that as long form content, right? So those videos are longer, right? There's anywhere between like 8 to 15 minutes. And I can send those to prospective clients or people that engage with me on LinkedIn based around maybe a topic that they were interested in or something that they asked me about. So that works really well. And we're also able to take short form videos from the long form videos and repurpose them onto social media. So those are like my core platforms today. I would add that I'm doing, a little bit of like outreach, but the newsletter is really what we do via email. We use other social platforms as well. Those are mainly repurposed content from LinkedIn or from YouTube or from the newsletter / blog. We have a blog on our website that goes up once a week as well.
Okay. That's a lot. So these are the things that you are actively, they're being worked on right now. Tell me some of the things that you tried before that you've left behind.
Yeah, sure. That I've loved. Number one, I would say I kept the podcast, but I changed the theme of the podcast. And I actually it was positioned to me as a lead generation opportunity. It didn't feel authentic to me. It didn't feel, and I had a marketing company that was trying to essentially get guests for me. When I started sort of finding my own guests, a lot of which are just people that I've connected with on LinkedIn or I like their stuff on LinkedIn, it's become a lot more sort of natural, organic, and authentic. So that was something that I tweaked along the way. I tried cold email. I've done a little bit of like lead generation services, but I actually learned that was earlier on. I learned that I'd rather just kind of create those on my own, just for my own content. I feel like is you have better cost metrics, but more importantly, when you have really authentic content, which I know the people that come to you are like naturally qualified, right?
Right.
Like you don't even need to put a qualifier in there, right? So if you work with one of like the big lead generators in our space, they will ask the client, like, what do you have in investable assets? What do you have in income? Things like that. I don't really even ever need to do that, because if they're resonating with my stuff, they already fit my target market, like with a pretty high degree of success. It wasn't always that way, but I've definitely, fine-tuned it along the way.
Okay. I love that. Well, okay. So let's talk about the newsletter, because it sounds like, did I hear you correctly? That's where it started, was the newsletter?
Yeah, I started the newsletter and posting on LinkedIn around the same time. Okay.
Okay.
So I had done some LinkedIn outreach prior to ever creating content, right? And I was just using kind of the old school, connect with people in your ICP, try and strike up a conversation, that kind of thing. And that was several years ago. LinkedIn has evolved and become a lot more crowded, especially when you're looking to just do DMs. That can still work. It very much can, but you need to do it a little bit. It's got to be a lot more organic. It's got to be a lot more customized. If you just do sort of the generic outreach and automated messaging, I think it's very difficult to get these days. So those two started around the same time, the newsletter and then LinkedIn, and they pair well with each other, because a lot of times the same concepts, while I'm writing them differently and I'm packaging them differently, but a lot of the same concepts that are going in the newsletter can also be used for LinkedIn posts.
Absolutely. And is the newsletter like an email that you send out, or is it a LinkedIn newsletter?
So what we do today is started as a LinkedIn newsletter. Today, it's an email that gets sent out. You actually can subscribe to it on LinkedIn, not through my own personal page, because that's actually, frankly, got plenty of content on it, through our company page. So you can subscribe to the newsletter through our company page and get essentially the same copy. But we have a lot more people that are now just subscribed via email, and they get it in their inbox once a week.
So tell me, because I think a lot of people, they love the idea of doing a newsletter, but they're like, well, who am I going to send it to? It takes, a lot of people are like, how do you crack that code of getting people to sign up for your newsletter? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So early on, I started by connecting with a lot of people on LinkedIn. And then I frankly just got a lot of people that I asked them if they would want to be a part of it. Like that was literally how I started, right? I just literally sent out a bunch of emails and direct messages and said, here's what I'm going to be doing. Here's what it's going to all be about. It's going to be free. And, we're not going to like spam your inbox or anything like that. We're going to send a high value piece of content once a week, right? And that's it. Yeah, we've got some calls to action that we bake in there from time to time, but I have prospects. I have one that I met with last week, and what he said to me was, what I really like about your stuff is it's not like clickbait, right? So we're actually trying to provide really high value content. So what ended up happening, Hillary, was I got a list of people, and I just started out with just try to be super, super high in value. And because of that, I think I got a pretty low unsubscribe rate, right? So I started with a baseline there. And now it's just kind of grown organically. We've been doing it for about 2 years now. And it's just sort of grown organic through, it's one of my calls to action, LinkedIn. And it shows up in a couple of other places as well. Sometimes we'll get some subscribers off of YouTube. And then a lot of times I'll just be like chatting with people in different places and say, would you like to be a part of this? I took your best practice and I put it on my calendar link as well. So when somebody a meeting with me, whether they be a prospect or even a lot of times they could be like a center of influence or a potential partner or whatever the case may be, they'll join the newsletter. And that's nice because those are people that, potentially could refer me business. I actually started, this is newer. I'm only a couple of editions in, but I just started at the beginning of this year, a centers of influence monthly newsletter. So that one's just monthly. So I just send that out to them. I just have a curated list. That list is, it just have a curated list, and I just try to add value. So I just try and give them some financial planning stuff, some business development tips and tricks. And you know what? I think it, hopefully adds value to them and keeps me top of mind.
Dan, you're like a marketer's dream because that is literally what was going through my mind of, oh, you have COIs joining your email list because they've scheduled meetings with you or from these other different sources. What a great little segment that you can send targeted content to turn on those referrals, hopefully. And I mean, you said it, keep you top of mind. So what does it take for you? Because I know, and I know you know this, with a lot of these marketing channels and platforms, it takes time to see results. And the results could be anything from I'm getting more engagement to I'm actually directly getting people booking discovery calls on my calendar. So how do you decide, and what time frame do you give a platform to feel like, okay, this is worth my time and energy or even money, or I'm going to leave this one behind?
I think each one is probably a little bit unique and different.
Mm.
But what I typically think about is I'm going to test it on a small enough level. I believe in this concept that a line that Jim Collins uses, the famed business author. And he said, fire a bullet. And then if the bullet hits, fire cannonballs. Right. So
Mm.
I always fire a bullet in anything I do in my business. So it's always like, how can we test this small? So if I'm going to a new platform, what I'm typically going to do is I'm going to outline, number one, who's doing it already at a high level that I can learn from,
Mm.
right? So I'm going to try and learn from others. I might buy a course. I might get on a call with someone. I'm going to try to learn from them first. And then I'll probably follow some people that are already doing it well.
Mm.
Then I'm going to invest somewhere in the neighborhood of, if it's a new platform, it might be an hour a week, right? And I'm going to say, first and foremost, do I like this? Like, am I actually like dreading doing that 1 hour, or am I enjoying it? Like, I love LinkedIn. I spend about an hour on LinkedIn a day and I enjoy it. There's no part of that I dread, because I think it's just like one big virtual networking event. I enjoy that. But there are other platforms, like I'll tell you, Twitter/X is one that I'm on right now. And I'm considering if I should be on it long term, right? We're a little bit, I like it, but I don't much. And so that's one that's kind of under the microscope for me right now. I'm telling you that.
Interesting.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So what I was
ask
saying
you.
is I think you just want to start small, see if you like it, see if you're getting traction. And then the real commitment time frame is 6 months, right? You got to give it 6 months to see if you're building traction. And if not, you probably want to reevaluate, because any of these platforms work, right? It's just about, where is your ICP hanging out, right? And then what do you enjoy doing, and what do you have the right skill sets to do, right? If you love being in front of the camera, we'll do a lot of video content, right? If you absolutely dread that, then stay away from it. And maybe you like to write more. We'll do the newsletter, write a book, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I have a question for you. So you said you're kind of testing out X/Twitter right now, which is like a thread style, can be long form content with threads, can be short form content. Have you tested on Threads yet? The meta version?
So I did test on Threads and I stopped, and I probably should revisit going back to that, because it was a little early on in its infancy. So yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of like LinkedIn posts, we try to vary our LinkedIn posts. So, I mean, I can take you through that, but I'm usually doing 6 LinkedIn posts a week, and they're not, it's not like super repeatable, but I can just tell you, like, in a 6-day stretch, I'm going to probably do one video. I'm going to probably do one text only post. I'm going to do one that's like a client example. I'm going to do one that's like a little bit more personal and going to show a picture of me or my family or whatever the case may be. So I have a pretty good routine. The ones that are a little bit more technical can correlate very well to the thread style on either X or Threads, to your point.
Okay. Let's see. I wrote down a bunch of questions and now I'm trying to figure out which one is the best. Talk to me a little bit about the podcast. You mentioned it was pitched to you as like a lead generator, but it didn't turn out to be that exactly. So you shifted. Where do you see the podcast really fitting into the rest of your ecosystem, if you will, with LinkedIn and the newsletter? Like how are you using it to continue to build trust?
I am building trust, bringing on professionals that serve either a different market than me, right? Mm-hmm. Or serve maybe a similar customer, but in a different way. Like, mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. I have somebody that's coming on next day. He's a real estate syndication professional, right? I have clients that invest in real estate, right? Like, do I do the real estate stuff for them? No, but it's a part of their financial plan, right? Mm-hmm. So like knowing people that are good professionals in that area is good for me. So it's building my network. It's building with potential partners. It's, there's an aspect of learning for me, and we're always doing something to bring it back to making sense of their money. And I also like that I get people to kind of open up, and oftentimes they are skilled financial professionals, but we're getting them to tell their money story as well. So I think it's pretty cool. So we put that in like the prerequisite. So I think it like gets people to kind of open up and tell. If you hear from a professional that's had challenges in their own financial world, it just makes the whole thing seem a little less scary, if you will, which I think is a good thing. And if I never generated a lead from it, I think what it does is it builds our ecosystem. It connects us with a broader audience, and it gets me connected with talented professionals that like I just enjoy having relationships with. Whether we end up referring each other business or using each other or not, like maybe that will be the case for some and maybe not for others. It certainly has for some of the people that I brought on. And then I think it also gets you onto other podcasts and stuff like that once you like kind of brand yourself there. So it just like, it gets you out there, right? And again, I really believe in setting like time blocks for any of this stuff. So I'm not going to go record 20 podcasts a week. Like that just wouldn't make sense for me. But now I've got it down. Once you figure out how to do it, you can get it down to a place where you're not spending a ton of time on it. I've got a virtual assistant who does a great job with like all the editing work and the stuff that go into the production after the fact. So initially it was pitched as like, go after COIs and like you want them to refer you business. And when I tried to like make it that intent, it just didn't feel great. And I actually didn't think the guests were as in line with our mission. When I started sourcing them myself, just through kind of my own it worked out a lot better, and really appreciate being asked to come.
Yes, absolutely. That's what I love about having an interview-based podcast too, is the networking and the relationships that you build from it has been a game changer for me. And I think too, like I don't know if I've ever had somebody say no to being a guest on a podcast, maybe once or twice, but yeah, I just think it's such a great tool for that. So when we talk about this concept of an ecosystem, you have these different platforms that are all kind of contributing to one another in some way. How do you really know where somebody came from? Like you mentioned, LinkedIn is a great client acquisition tool for you. How do you know that somebody came from LinkedIn? Or how do you know that somebody listened to a podcast and then reached out? Like, how do you I think sometimes it's impossible to know.
It is.
So tell me a little bit about how you've worked through that.
This is one of our objectives so I have a finance team member and we meet once a week. And one of the things that we do is we measure for every new client that we bring on, we try to identify a source. So I'll come back to your question, but I want to tell you what we're doing with that. Mm-hmm. And then for every dollar that we spend on marketing, we have those same lists of sources, right? Mm-hmm. So it might be newsletter, it might be LinkedIn, because there's stuff there's spends there. It might be podcasts, it might be YouTube, whatever the case may be. And then I try to identify when the client comes in, where did they come from, right? And so then as the year goes on, I can look back and I can say, we got X amount of new clients from LinkedIn and we spent Y dollars. So like, what was our ROI on that spend, right? And then you could do the same sort of math. I frankly just ask them. I always ask I always start with like a very brief get to know you intro call via Zoom, typically via Zoom. They're close to me, maybe we'll meet in person, but typically via Zoom. And I always just say, where did you come? How did you find me, right? Or how did we get connected, right? Sometimes it's a combination, right? Like I met with a guy last week and he said, I've been following You're Making Sense of Your Money for a while now. And I was like, all right, well, was that the newsletter? Was that my LinkedIn? Was that my YouTube? I identified that he was most aligned with letter, but I usually just ask front, and that helps me, and then I just mark that down in our system, and if that person does become a client, then that will go into tally for clients that we've brought in from that specific channel.
That's really smart. I think you're taking one of the more systematic approaches that I've heard before. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Dan. So as we wrap up, I have two kind of final questions for you. One, is there anything that I haven't asked you about yet that you think would be really pertinent to this conversation or that plays a role in your marketing ecosystem that we haven't talked about enough?
Yeah. So my advice to others would be this: don't first look at platforms, right? Identify first, like, how much time can you commit in a given week to marketing / business development, right? Mm-hmm. I would identify that first. And everybody's different, right? If you're the main service-based advisor and you've got a large book of business and you've got a decent amount of growth and you're just kind of doing it all yourself, you might not have a lot of time. And it might be just a referral-only practice, and that's fine. I know some people that are wildly successful with those types of businesses, right? Yeah. And then it's, in our field, we also get to define how many hours a week we want to work, right? Like, we get a chance to make that decision, right? So be honest with yourself. How many hours a week do you want to work? And then I would back into, okay, after the client stuff, after you do what you have to do to run the business per se, just some of that like CEO back office type work, how much time do you have left to commit to generating new business, right? Mm. And then from there, I would just start to time block and say, okay, based on the amount of time that I have, I might be able to commit to, I'm making this up, but a networking group and LinkedIn. Like, maybe those are the two that I'm going to commit to right now, right? Mm-hmm. And just be ultra consistent with those for at least 6 months. You know this, and financial advisors talk about this all the time, but I don't think we always practice what we preach when it comes to marketing, and that is the compounding effect, right? Yeah. We talk about compounding when it comes to people's money all the time. Marketing has a massive compounding, right? You are not just going to show up and start to put stuff out there and people are just going to automatically start booking on your calendar. It doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. I like LinkedIn the best because there's inbound and outbound, right? So that's what I like about it. There's a little bit more control there, right? Like, if one week I'm not getting a ton of people that are just reaching out to me via my content, well, maybe I'm reaching out to more people, right? A little bit more over that, which is cool. But that's where I would start, is time block how much you can spend on it, and then figure out the platforms you want to test, see if you like them, and then allow enough time for the compounding to work.
I really like that you said that, Dan. Two things that came to mind here is, yes, give it 6 months to see what kind of traction you're getting. And then know that even if you're getting a little bit of traction after 6 months and you keep going, like, how much greater will that traction be after another 6 months? Like, the compounding effect. So I think sometimes people they have in their minds, I'm going to give it 6 months. And if it's not resulting in like 4 new calls a week for me within 6 months, then it's not working. But that's not the case. You have to set your standards or your bar to a reasonable level for that first 6 months, and know that if it reaches that reasonable bar, then you move the bar up for the next 6 months. Would you agree with that?
100%. And I would say that if you're committing for something for that next 6 months, I think you have to raise the bar. And I frankly find that if you're getting some traction, the bar will naturally raise. It absolutely will. Because you're going to learn a lot about whatever that marketing and business development strategy is. You're going to get at it. I certainly found that. Like, I look back at some of the stuff I wrote and some of the videos I did even just 1-2 years ago. I'm like, I would have never do that today, right? So you learn a lot of the way. You see what's working. You see what resonates with people. And then, oh, by the way, like, when you just go out and do your job, whether it be talking to clients, talking to centers of influence, just whatever you're doing out in the community, you start to have ideas that can actually be packaged for content purposes, right? I can't tell you the amount of times I'm just like doing something random in my life and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea for a newsletter, or that's a great idea for a LinkedIn post, or I'm just like
Yeah.
out with a couple of buddies and they say something to me. I'm like, that would be a great concept to use here, there, and everywhere, right? So like those things naturally start to like appear. I think early on it's like, well, what am I going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
And you want the stuff to be authentic. There's a lot that's out there. And by the way, you can use marketing companies. You can use some of the bigger ones to kind of like compliment you early on. I think the authentic stuff is going to have a much higher upside, but there's a lot of ways to go about it.
It's so true. I feel like for the first 6 to even 12 months of my journey on LinkedIn, I would struggle every single week to think about what am I going to write about? What am I going to write about? And you think like, oh, I'm going to run out. I don't have ideas right now. I'm just going to run out of ideas. But it's the opposite. Now I have more ideas than I could ever conceivably create for LinkedIn because it does start to compound in that way. My last question for you, Dan, if there was one thing in your business that I could like snap my fingers and it would magically change or get better, what would that be?
Well, right now I'm hiring a role, so that is, and it's someone that I hope is going to lead sort of our financial planning efforts moving forward. So if I could snap my fingers, I think I'm pretty close. So I'm going to knock on wood. I'm not going to snap my fingers, but I'm going to knock on my wood desk here. I hope that comes to fruition because that's going to allow me to be even like laser focused on all of the stuff that we discussed. So that would be it right now. So you don't have to wave the wand, but maybe for me and hopefully that'll work out because once we get that rolled, I think we're going to be pedal to the metal.
Oh, I love that, Dan. Well, I'm so excited for the growth that you are experiencing and that you'll continue to experience. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, where are the best places for them to do that?
Yeah, great. And I love talking to other advisors. And I specifically love talking about advisor marketing. So if anybody wants to reach out and pick my brain, probably the easiest is on LinkedIn. So just at Dan Pascone. You can check me out on LinkedIn there. Our website is yourtailoredwealth.com. And the content brand, which is built into that website, but it has a separate component, is makingsenseofyourmoney.com. So any of those places you can find. If you want to just connect and chat or exchange messages, find me on LinkedIn and we'll do that.
Awesome. Well, I will link to all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Dan. This has been lovely.
Thanks for having me on, Hillary. Love the show and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.